from what is called a composite rate that we have now to tiers. And what that means is, right now, if you're full-time, they pay one rate, right? You know, depending on the company, you know, many of the companies, employee pays $20, they pay $267 and change a week, okay? Regardless of whether you need coverage for just you or your family, whatever you need, it's one set rate, okay? And what that does is it shares that cost burden, right? And it makes it kind of more affordable for families, because we're all paying the same. And what they say is they want to move to tiers, which is it's one rate for if you're paying for single, another rate if you're paying for single plus spouse, another for single plus children, another for family, okay? And they are all locked in on moving to a 90% company, 10% employee cost share, whether starting in 2026 or by 2028, okay? And so I think that is a big piece, because they will not move off of this as it stands, okay? And we're going to talk about why that's challenging. Another thing is that they do not want to use Siegel's recommended true cost rates. Okay, so Siegel is the actuary that the fund uses that says, look, you know, you do all your behind the scenes number crunching based on health trends and what you project, and they've got all this data, right? They're the experts at doing this. They crunch the numbers and come back with what are called the true cost rates, which is like, this is the cost of what healthcare will be next year, the year after, the year after, okay? And they do remarkable work. I mean, in the last years, they've been like within 0.2% accurate, okay? So they are spot on. But the companies have said, look, we don't want to pay the true cost rates. We want to pay less than that because we want to use the reserves to offset some of those costs. And so, in essence, and this gets kind of lost in the details because it's complicated by going to tiers. Like, it's easy to kind of mask this thing, but essentially they want to freeze the 2024 rates and use our reserves to keep their costs down. And so, you know, I drew this diagram earlier, right? Like, here's the 2023, kind of the cost of healthcare. Cost of healthcare goes up every year. On average, it's about 7.5% increase each year, okay? But what they want to do is, no, they want to freeze and only pay the 2024 rates. The problem is, and you don't see this in their proposals, but what that sets us up for is that in 2028, when we bargain our next contract, there's a massive jump. Because we gotta, even though we're using reserves to hold the cost down here, that's gonna jump sky high. Because we're seeing 4 years worth of increases all at once. I'm gonna pause for a second. Reactions, do folks get that? Does that make sense? It's confusing, okay?
Also, who was here 10 years ago when there was this crisis with the healthcare on our union plan? Because employers had been not paying true cost for years. So who was here? Raise your hand high. You all remember that benefit reduction? You all remember the wage freezes and people giving back vacation time? The pay for the healthcare to keep it solvent? You all remember when part-timers all lost their healthcare? Regular part-timers used to have healthcare. Folks remember that?
Yeah.
That is what happens when you do not actually pay the true cost of the benefit. You cannot provide a benefit that you are not fully funding every week, every year. Because if you do that over time, you create a hole that you have to fill at some point. The bill always comes due.
And so, you know, look, some of the companies have also talked about, look, yeah, we're gonna go to 90-10 split. And yes, it's going to increase some costs, right? And yes, it's going to increase costs for families pretty substantially out of the gate. But we're going to add money to an HRA, a health reimbursement account, to kind of offset costs. Now, that is awesome, because actually it is something we've been proposing, okay? However, they don't want to make that a regular thing and they only want to do it for these 2 years and then it expires, right? They're like softening the blow, so to speak, on the increase. And so, the real problem is their proposals set us up to face major cost increases the next contract. If we go to the next slide. All right, folks probably can't see this. The Siegel true cost. This is the company rates. I'm just going to use an example of, in the year of 2027, Siegel for family, if you're doing tiers, the true cost is $653.93. The company is freezing these rates throughout at $570, right? So you're already $80 less per week, right? The reserves are paying that difference. If we go to the next. So, we have this challenge in bargaining, that they want to use a set of rates that is going to hold it down, okay? Eat up the reserves, and that they want to force going to 90-10 split, okay? And so, I want to be honest, in our last pass, your bargaining committee made a package proposal that we as members would pay significantly more out of the gate, okay? Have folks seen this in these diagrams the companies have put up? Yeah. Okay. Yep. So there's some truth to that. Okay? Go back. But they're not telling you the whole story. Okay? Which is, we heard them say that they are near the limit of what they're willing to pay. They clarified in this last one and said, no, we're at the limit. But they previously said they're near the limit. And so we came back with an offer that tried to get the total cost near their level. Understanding there are also things that we need that aren't included in that. Added raises for the part-timers, bringing up the floor on the part-time wages, right? A variety of different things that vary by company, right? And your committee said, look, we're gonna up how much we pay in healthcare to buy these other things, okay? Because they are important to us. Now they've neglected that in their picture. So, also, what we were using in ours were numbers that didn't just drain the reserves the whole time and set us up for a really bad position in 2028, okay? And so, yeah, paying $40 a week when you're talking about total weekly rate is much higher than what they're proposing. It's not just simply how much employees pay. It's also how much other companies pay. Okay? And the thing they're not including in there is that in all of their proposals, what they are proposing is that every single year of our 3-year contract, they are paying less dollars in healthcare than they did in 2024. Every single year. Which is kind of crazy, because inflation. So,
well, they're paying less because they're using our money as a reserve, right, to pay for it, and they're expecting members to pay for more. So yeah, their part goes down because you're paying for that instead.
okay. So your bargaining committee had some really hard conversation, made some really difficult decisions. They were quite amazing, where by and large the full-timers said, you know what, we're going to pay more because we need to fund and take care of the things we need in the store. We need more hours for our part-timers, we need to raise the wage for our part-timers, we got to take care of each other. Okay? And the companies came back and said, oh, you're willing to pay more in healthcare? We will take that. Oh, but those things you wanted to spend it on? No. We actually think it needs to be spent over here. That is literally what they said. We know better. And so, look, the last bargaining session, everybody was pissed off. Because it was like, no, you're not listening to us. told us, we don't care how you spend it, it's the total dollars. You can carve it up however you want. And we attempted to do that, and then you said, no, that's not how we like it. And so, look, your committee was just offended because they did not listen. So you'll see these charts, the Lunds and Byerly's one, see, oh, the company is only proposing this, the union's proposing this, right? Here's Jerry's. Jerry's estimates the union proposal would have employees paying $1.4 million more for healthcare. Yeah, that's probably actually true. That is true. But they neglect the fact that we propose that money go other places that are important for our members. Increasing the 401k contributions for everybody, increasing the, anyway, I won't go on, I think you get the point.
Yes.
And so, look, we're facing this problem, where the companies are locked in on moving to tiers and they're locked in on moving to a 90-10 split on healthcare, okay? And so, if you use Siegel's numbers, right, for what they say the cost should be in 2027, and if you add what is called a 7.5% trend, which is what they're using, that every year it's going to go up 7.5%, you carry that forward, that their projected rates for 2028 would be this, okay? $211 a week and change for single, right? The company is proposing $165, right? You can see it. The real start one is families, right? Would go to $730.82 a week. Now, 10% of that is $73 a week. So, their proposal, by forcing going to 90-10, by forcing keeping the rates artificially low by using the reserves, sets us up that come next contract, not only are we going to see this big increase, but the company is going to say, whoa, we're absorbing such a huge increase, right? We're paying an extra $160. Our costs are ballooning. Mm-hmm. And they start to force a conversation of either drastic benefit cuts, a drastic shift in cost to employees, or to maintain our current health care, that we take shit for wages. That is what they are setting up.
Wait, a week's vacation like we did last time.
Okay? And so, it is a problem where they set us for. Now,
Last week.
you go to the next slide. So, in this last class, we offered a solution. We offered a really creative solution, which is, all right, even if we went off of your rates or some similar version, that we would propose a rate reset, effective January 2028. Mind you, right? New contract starts March 2028, so we're talking about 2 months worth. That, fine, we're gonna use the reserves down, we're gonna keep these costs artificially low, but in January 2028, we wanna reset. Let's be honest about the rates, okay? And that the honest rates kick in. And that way, it ensures we're not dealing with this nightmare of who's paying for this massive increase, okay? And they rejected it. Wholeheartedly rejected it. We're not interested in it. Why?
Cost too much money. Because they know it's going to cost.
Cost them too much money? On 2 months, it wouldn't cost them that much money. I heard it, what was it in that?
It's because they know it's coming in the long term.
Right, 'cause the bill always comes due.
The bill comes due.
And who's gonna pay it? Next contract.
Not them.
What happened 10 years ago? Who paid it?
We did.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what they're trying to force, is either future concessions. Yeah, I mean, that's just it, future concessions. And so, next slide. And so the question is, where do we go from here, right? Like, your bargaining committee has done everything in their power at the table. They've tried all sorts of creative solutions to try and shape this, including saying, we're willing to pay a ton more in healthcare, but we want to keep our flat rates, right? We don't want to go to 90-10. And so we're in a spot where, look, total dollars, we're not really that far apart, except for Lunds of Barley's, because they're being cheap on the part-timers.
25 cents every 6 months.
But all the other companies, we're pretty close. We're like within 1% of total cost, right? Like, we are not far away. But we are very far apart in principle on our priorities. And the companies are dug in and are dismissive about our alternatives. And it's clear that unless we take major action like a strike, they are not going to move off of the tiers, they're not going to move off the 90-10, and they're not going to move off of keeping the rates artificially low on healthcare. And so, look, we're at a crossroads where we really gotta decide where do we go from here. And so the bargaining committee needs your feedback. How do we proceed? Okay. So we are gonna put a poll. We're gonna do these Zoom meetings and walk through all the details, right? And we want as many people educated as possible. But we're gonna do a poll, a vote of our membership, electronic vote, okay? To get your feedback on where you think we should go. Because really, we left bargaining and the bargaining committee was unanimous. We can't accept this. It's too problematic. It's too problematic and leaves us in a bad spot heading into the next contract. And they were unanimous on that. But the question is, are we gonna strike over it? And look, that is not a decision we take lightly. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think it would be a 1-day strike or a 2-day strike or a 3-day strike. I think they're coming at this and they want it. And so the choice we've got to decide is, you know what? We can live with this. We can live with it. It's not the end of the world. We're going to take, because the raises are okay, right? It's not going to bankrupt the healthcare, not this contract, okay? The reserves can withstand that for 3 years, okay? So the choice is we can compromise and accept something similar to this, and avoid a strike. But the problem is, that means almost certainly we are headed to strike in 2028. And so we could do that, or we can strike now. Those are both bad options. I'm just gonna be honest with you. They're both bad options. But
If we strike, how can that start?
we've got some capacity to decide when that would be, right?
They've already sent out letters. What do you mean?
But it's do we deal with it now or do we deal with it later? And there's no right answer in that. There really isn't, I'm gonna be honest with you. Look, right now, we'd be in a different spot if we had a strike fund, I'm gonna be honest with you. No, we don't have a strike fund.
If you want to help station. Do you folks remember the vote in October?
Yes.
Do you folks remember that everybody voted it down? Right.
But the majority of our union, which is how it goes, right?
That's the total.
We don't have
And
it.
it
That was just a
would have narrowly passed if it was just the metro. Narrowly.